information session was actually in September 2018, which for some of us who have been working hard on this project seems like only yesterday, but I'm sure that for those of you in the community, you've been wondering what we've been up to. At that time, we indicated, and we gave you, the community, an undertaking that we would be back to you to present this Northern Car Park scheme before the lodgement of the DA with Economic Development Queensland. And we also told you at that time that we had indicated to Economic Development Queensland that we thought it was appropriate that this development application be publicly notified, and that will certainly be part of the process. So we're now at the point where we are very much ready to lodge the development application with EDQ. In the significant time that's passed since we last spoke to you, we've been doing a whole range of work on Hurston Quarter, but specifically in relation to the Northern Car Park, there's been some refinement of the design work. And we've been working hard to commence some other activities on the project. So we thought tonight we'd start with a quick overview of Hurston Quarter and what we've been up to. I'll get through that relatively quickly, and then we'll get to some of the points on the development application for the Northern Car Park, and indeed another application that we're proposing to lodge in the weeks ahead, which relates to the Childcare Centre for Hurston Quarter. As Martin said in the introduction, my presentation is being recorded, and a link to that will be sent to all of the participants later this week. So if you do want to go back and look at it again, you'll have the chance to do that. Thank you, Rach. Okay, so the first and most prominent stage of Hurston Quarter is the Surgical Treatment and Rehabilitation Service, the STARS, our public hospital. It's on the site of the former, or part of the site of the former Children's Hospital. It kicked off in 2017 with the demolition works, and then the actual construction in April 2018. We're now at the point where you probably see the lights are on in parts of the building at night time, and it's really coming together and very much nearing completion. So over the next 3 or 4 months, we move to the completion of that facility, and later this year, we do the formal handover to Metro North, and they will ramp up their operations in the public hospital from the end of this year through the course of 2020. You'll see outside the building that the Spanish Steps and the public realm are really starting to take shape now. And they will all be ready for the building to be opened later in the year. And we're also getting close to the completion of some services works in Hurston Road, which will mean that that returns back to normal in terms of the traffic control that you're probably experiencing at the moment. Thank you, Rach. This image just gives you an understanding of the commencement of our Heritage Precinct works. So we're looking on the left of screen at one of the Lady Lamington Towers, and the building in the foreground is the Dodds building. So we've started our heritage enabling works. What that involves is taking down some ancillary structures that didn't have any heritage value. And you might have noticed that the milk kitchen annexed to the Edith Cavell building was demolished on Saturday. There's also some excavation works, which you're seeing in this image, that'll drop the level of the ground there. And what you're seeing there is part of our future town square. The whole idea of the Heritage Precinct redevelopment is that we return this part of the precinct to its former glory. And the Lady Lamington and Dodds buildings that you're seeing there are going to be converted into a student accommodation facility, which is taking those buildings back to, in effect, their original use, which was nurses' quarters, amongst other things. The Edith Cavell building and Lady Norman building refurbishments are also part of this heritage core. We have started the refurbishment works of Edith Cavell, and that's part of this initial package. We haven't yet started the Lady Norman works, and won't for a little while because we're using that as a site office. for our construction activities. I think, as we've mentioned to the community before, and certainly people will be aware from the messages we're sending to the public, that our objective for the Heritage Precinct is that we create a vibrant town square type location that will be an attraction for not only the people that live and work in the precinct, but for those that live and work around the precinct. So we're looking at retail and some other amenities in that Heritage Precinct. Thank you, Rach. Next just is the services diversion. So last time we spoke to the community, we made it clear that there was a package of work to occur as enabling work for the Northern Car Park, much like the enabling work we're doing in the Heritage Precinct. So in early Feb, we started this preliminary work, and the perspective you have is looking at the Hurston Alcohol and Drug Service building from probably the car park of Ronald McDonald House. So we have to do this work to relocate some services, to do some clearance and excavation and retention of this rock face before we can start the Northern Car Park. These works will continue on until the end of this year, and at which point in time we would have expected to be in a position to start the Northern Car Park construction works. Thank you, Rach. I'll now jump into the Northern Car Park. So, we've had a number of conversations with the community as a group and with individuals. And from our previous conversations, we're well aware of what we think the issues of concern to the community are, and that those are things like the bulk and scale of the building, the potential for there to be noise and light spill emanating from the building, traffic in the streets surrounding Hurston Quarter is a very important issue, as is the way in which this very large building presents itself in terms of its facade and the like. And we've also had some feedback in relation to landscaping and presentation of the public realm. So we've been busy as part of the design refinement process in making sure that those things are addressed appropriately, and hopefully you'll see those things coming through tonight. We've also obviously been assembling our development application, and I will talk about the timing of that a little later. Thank you, Rach. Okay, so this is an artist's impression perspective of the Northern Car Park, and this is probably looking, a perspective roughly from the roof of the Hurston Medical Research Facility, looking back towards the RBWH and the car park. So as you can see, we're conscious that it's a very big building, and the work that's been done in terms of the way that the facade of the building's treated is to provide some articulation and to break up the mass of the building, rather than it being one big long continuous mass. So there are some evolutions of our previous facade concepts in getting to this point. I guess the things that are coming through here are that there are the colouring, the warm colours in the facade. It's broken up by patterning and by some vertical elements in two central elements there. The facade is an anodised metal material, and the panels in the facade are angled in a way that is deliberate to ensure that light doesn't spill out of the building, both in terms of vehicles that might be moving around in the building, but also the amenity lighting inside the building. The facade and the way in which floors will be treated inside the car park also addresses the potential of noise emanating out of the building. So we're very pleased with the way in which the design team has responded to some of these challenges in addressing a facade that we're very pleased with at the moment. Move to the next slide. So this just gives you a bit of a summary snapshot of the car park itself. It hasn't changed in size. It's still a 9-storey building. We have incorporated some bicycle parking spaces into the building, and that's part of providing bicycle parking across the precinct. As I think those of you that have been in discussion with us previously understand, this is a pretty challenging site. The perspective that we see in this image is from Research Road, but on the other side of the building we have Back Road in the hospital campus, and there's a 19-metre level difference between Research Road and Back Road. And what that allows us to do is to have 2 entry and exit points for the car park. The Back Road entry and exit point is at level 7 of the car park. And of course, we have the Research Road entry and exit point as well. So the experts in relation to the traffic elements have told us, and I'm sure we'll reaffirm tonight, that having a dual entry and exit opportunity for the car park is beneficial. The car park is naturally ventilated, so and that's one of the advantages of the permeable facade. And as you'll see, and as I'll go into a little bit more detail, the way in which the Research Road street level is treated with landscaping and vegetation is something that we've taken very seriously. Thank you, Rach. So moving to that, this is the street level perspective of Research Road, and we are looking roughly from the northwest towards the car park entry. So nice wide footpath is proposed, and then verge planting and street trees. And that's a consistent theme throughout Hurston Quarter, where we've been very conscious to ensure that we deliver a high quality public realm, the spaces that connect the buildings, and provide a positive experience for those that visit the precinct, that might traverse the precinct and that work in the precinct. Thank you, Rach. So moving to traffic, we know that the movement of vehicles around the precinct is something that's that the community is concerned about and sensitive to, and there are various measures that we have assessed that we will need to implement as part of this proposed development to ensure that we don't have a negative impact on the traffic flows in the streets around. Andrew Douglas is with us tonight, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer questions around these elements. They're not definitive in as much as some of those that relate to the external streets are subject to Brisbane City Council's approval, and that referral will be part of the development application and approval process. I think something that is important to be clear on is that the traffic reports that we submit with our development application will be publicly available, and so the analysis behind the traffic assessment will be absolutely visible to those of you who are interested at that point in time. Thank you, Rach. Then coming up to the other side of the car park, this image just gives you a perspective of the Back Road frontage of the car park. So this entry and exit point is level 7 of the building. There are 2 levels of the building that you're seeing in the background there that rise above Back Road, and the height of the building at Back Road above the road level is approximately 8 metres. The road does slope down towards where the bird's eye is in this image. once again, I hope you get the perspective that the way in which the public spaces and the connecting spaces are proposed to be treated is something that's very high quality. And what you're seeing in this image is a covered walkway for the entry into the car park, which is an important element. Thank you, Rachel. And then in terms of the time horizon for us, we are in the process of finalising the assembly of the development application and working with Economic Development Queensland through the soft lodgement process. There are some discussions that will happen between EDQ and ourselves in relation to the components of the DA before we get to the DA being properly made, and we expect that to be sometime in late May, early June. And once the development application is properly made, that is what triggers the application being made available on the EDQ website, and the public notification period, which I understand to be 20 business days, kicks off at that point in time. So I'm sure that we will notify all of our interested community members when we get to that point via our normal channels. And indeed, there are other notification measures that we are required to implement, including signage on site and the like, that will be implemented as usual. We then anticipate that we will achieve our development approval sometime between June and the end of the calendar year, and be in a position to commence construction late in the year once those enabling works that I outlined before have started. There's about an 18-month construction horizon for the car park once we get started, so we expect that it will be about mid-2022 before the car park is completed and opened. So that gives you a clear timeline for the activities here. Now moving into the childcare centre. We have a requirement as part of our development agreement with Metro North Hospital and Health Service to relocate the Lady Ramsey Childcare Centre, which is up on Brampston Terrace. And that's about making way for future development of what we call our Stage 8 site, which is in the development scheme, the Wellbeing Precinct. It's taken us a bit of time to resolve where we would optimally place the childcare centre. We had originally proposed that it would be in the Heritage Precinct, and we've now determined that for timing and other issues, that there's a better location to put that. So if we move to the next slide, you can see that in the little circle there, we are proposing to put the childcare centre down adjacent to the Northern Car Park, in an area that was until recently part of where the former Leonard Lodge complex was. The development scheme does allow childcare as a permitted use in this precinct of the site, which is a positive thing. And some of the details about it: at 78 places, that's the same capacity as the current Lady Ramsey Childcare Centre. We're proposing it to be a 3-storey building. The car parking is what it's required to have in terms of the required ratio, and the primary access to it will be via Research Road and Butterfield Street. Next slide, please. So this is a perspective, an artist's impression of the way that we think that the childcare centre might look. This is obviously subject to some design development, but this elevation is looking at it from that Research Road frontage. So if you were standing in front of the Northern Car Park at Research Road, this is what you would see for the childcare centre. It's designed with an architectural style that's sympathetic to the Queenslander style of homes that are in the areas around, and the colours and materials that are being proposed at this point in time are sort of sympathetic to that Queenslander style. And the next slide shows you the perspective from the back of the building. There are some residential backyards that abut this site, and that's the kind of perspective that you might see from those residences. And if we jump to the next slide, just the timeline here. We are getting ready to lodge the development application in the coming weeks. It probably, I think, won't be before the end of the month, but early in May. And we are targeting commencement of construction for the childcare centre late this year as well, with a view to having it completed and opened in early 2022, late 21, early 2022. So that gives you some perspective there. That comes to the end of my presentation, and I'm really pleased to